I just sent an email out to Hans as well about the sharing the video option. We don't need that.
So thank you for starting the recording. Okay, so without much further ado, I would like to introduce the first speaker. No, actually, before we have the first speaker, excuse me, before we have the first speaker, we have the short film from Oslofjord Recreational Council. So Helena, if you could please play the video.
Plastpellets har forurenset mange strender I Oslofjorden denne våren.
Pellets som har forurenset store deler av kysten vår.
Det funnet store mengder med plastkuler langs med Sørlandskysten og helt inn I Oslofjorden.
Jakten på plastpellets I gang.
Jeg fikk yoga.
Jeg tror de første observasjonene var 16. mars. Og så har vi vært ute veldig mange dager og jobbet.
For en eller annen har sluppet ut små plastkuler fra et eller annet sted.
Som har gjort at det havnet på sjøen på en eller annen måte. Og I så store mengder og så sentralt I fjorden at det har spredd seg til hele Oslofjorden.
I flere dager har Larvik kommune og Oslofjorden friluftsråd med midler fra Handelsmiljøfond ryddet og ryddet.
Hver kvadratmeter strandzone må sjekkes nøye. Hit kan du ikke dra med deg tungt og avansert maskineri. Netting og plank må gjøre jobben på stranda.
Så langt har det vært en gåte hvor pelletsen kommer fra. Men nå mener forskningsselskapet Norner at de har løsninger.
Vi utrolig lei oss for det som har skjedd, og også lei oss for at det har tatt såpass lang tid å finne denne sammenhengen. Som sagt, dette skjedde langt syd i Nordsjøen for over 2 måneder siden. Da. Vi lover nå at vi skal gjøre alt som står i vår makt for å rydde opp. Det østsiden av Oslofjorden som det som hardest rammet. Det Fredrikstad og Pjæla-Moss-området det mye. Og så det litt i Vestfold, noe mindre i Telemark, men så har vi også noen registreringer helt nord i Agder som også blitt ryddet av.
I dag så har vi vel ute 30 personer på ulike steder, både på østsiden av fjorden og på vestsiden. Men vi liksom i den tidlige fasen nå, så målet jo å mobilisere mer etter hvert.
Thank you very much, Helena. After this overview of the incident, to set the scene for this event today, I would like to invite the first speaker today. The first speaker will be Rune Bergström, Senior Advisor and Incident Commander at the Norwegian Coastal Administration, the Kystverket. Norwegian Coastal Administration ensures safe and efficient traffic along the coast and into ports, and is responsible for the national emergency preparedness against acute pollution. And also maintains the government's responsibility for 24/7 preparedness against acute pollution, both at sea and on the shoreline. So Rune will speak about plastic pellets as acute pollution and speak about experiences in Norway from the Transcarrier incident. Rune, you have 15 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I will start to tell you a little bit about the Norwegian Coastal Administration, a bit about the background and the Norwegian Pollution Act and how this has been figured out to handle cases like this in Norway. And of course, our experience from the real accident here. But the Norwegian Coastal Administration, we actually have the responsibility for all navigation. It means lighthouses, all navigational aids, a lot of electronics. We even have our own satellite program to monitor ships' movements in the sea. And we are now actually just transferred to a new ministry. And so we are under the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries in Norway. And it doesn't make, we used to be under the Ministry of Transportation, but it doesn't change the tasks that we had to deal with anyway. So, but we both are working to have efficient transport at sea, because in general, transport at sea is better for the environment than other forms of transport. And we also try to do everything to make the sea transport greener, with both helping budgets, harbors, do everything to actually have as green as possible transportation. And as you may know, Norway is the nation that actually quite far ahead when it comes to new ways of propulsion systems based on electricity, hydrogen, ammonia, things like that. And we work closely with all the developers who work with that. And our vision is to have the safest and the cleanest seas in the world. So that is the goal that everybody is aiming for in Norwegian Coastal Administration. So that I work within the protection of the environment and environmental response, which is one of three main tasks that the Norwegian Coastal Administration deals with. So we have to prevent and limit environmental damage caused by acute pollution. So we have a 24-hour service. There's always somebody on guard who can start any sort of action if something happens. We also have a national emergency towing preparedness, especially in the north, because there are pretty large transportations of oil, gas, etc. comes from Russia and goes very close to the Norwegian coast in Finnmark and Troms, the northern parts of Norway. We also handle ships wreck that can cause damage or to the environment. That's mainly concerned with oil in them, but we also have some other shipwrecks that we are working with. And because of World War II, we have more than 2,000 shipwrecks in Norwegian waters. And we also follow up all cases when there is a polluter. So we also are the one who uses the law that assure that people are doing what they have to do according to the law. And we work a lot internationally on cooperation with all, because if there's a big oil spill or a big accident at sea, there's no nation in the world that can handle that alone. So we need actually help from other nations, resources, ships, equipment, people. And we have a couple of times we have gotten a lot of help from especially something called the Copenhagen Agreement. That is Norway and Sweden that works together. And when there is accident, we have gotten help, and we have also provided help to these nations. So when it comes to acute pollution, we are responsible for the government's preparedness. So this is sort of the top layer of preparedness when it comes to acute pollution. Of course, the polluter himself has to take action. The municipalities has to do things, etc. So we also have all the contingencies plans, because when there is an accident, the Navy, the Coast Guard, private resources, everybody plays together in Norway. And we have a very strong law, so we can pull on all these resources, both governmental and private resources, if we need them. So I said there are three levels. So the private preparedness is quite a lot of resources when it comes to the oil industry in the North Sea. They actually have a lot of oil recovery ships, and they have trained people on shoreline cleanups, things like that. But that is in the part of Norway that would be influenced by an accident. So they don't cover the whole Norway, but these resources are resources we can use. And of course, all private industry has their own preparedness. So there is quite a lot of private. And the municipalities, as we see in this case, they are also very important. They have to dimension themselves for typical local incidents they may have within their own borders. And they have to give assistance to us if there's a large emergency. And they also work in 32 regions where the municipalities has an agreement with their neighbors. So they have these intermunicipality preparedness regions called the EUA in Norwegian, which means Interkommunale utvalg mot akutt forurensning. So it's acute pollution that they work with. So then I'm coming to the trans-carrier incident. we already seen the movie. It happened far down there, and this is we have a system where you can see where things probably would show up, and we did that to get help from Norwegian Meteorological Institute to run different scenarios, different wind currents, and where they would hit. And this map is pretty accurate where it actually happened. The only thing is we haven't gotten any report from Denmark that they saw anything from this accident, but the Danish coast has a lot of sand, and we see that these pellets, if they're small amounts, they disappear very fast down in the sand. So the main thing for us, what we didn't know if this was within the law, what we define as an acute pollution there, or if it's more littering, then it's actually only the municipality that would be responsible for cleaning up in Norway. So that went to the highest level, and also to, there's a body in Norway where the government, when they don't agree about the laws, that they had to bring up these cases to, and they are deciding if this was acute pollution or not. And the decision ended up that this is an acute pollution situation because it happened acute and it could hurt the environment. And that was mainly concern, was that plastic pellets could be eaten by seabirds, fish, and that could affect the populations. So that's why it was defined as acute pollution. But as you know, the bureaucracy doesn't work very fast, so that took quite a long time before that was decided. But when that was decided, then we said that this is a national emergency, and then the Norwegian Coastal Administration can actually take share. Then we took contact with both the insurance company and the ship owner, and they both were Norwegian, and they both were very concerned about the influence that the accident could have to the environment. So they have been following up very closely, and we had a lot of meetings with these bodies to see what we're doing, how we're doing, how much resources, how much input we should have to clean up. And in addition, the ship owner has actually used more money than actually just for pellets. They also cleaned up all the marine litter. So this was not a really big accident. It's just half a container we're talking about. But when you see the numbers, it's 620 million pellets. And that's why they showed up everywhere. So there's a lot when you actually see that, but the amount, and if you have heard about the accident in Sri Lanka, it's about 100 times more. So, so the stakeholders then, when we say that this is a national emergency situation, then it's Norwegian Coastal Administration who makes the decisions. We make the priorities. Where should we clean up? How much should we clean up? And we also, all the costs goes through the Norwegian administration, and they are sent to the polluter, and that they are represented by the insurance company, which is Guide, who's also situated as Grid in Arendal. So we have a very close cooperation with that insurance company, and had many cases during the years with them. So we know them pretty well, and they know us. So. And the ship owner, they had people who followed the whole operation, and they also made contracts with Oslofjorden Friluftsråd, which has been playing a much more important part in this accident than if it had been an oil spill, both because they started cleaning up before we said that this was a national accident that we had to be in charge of, and also because they had contact with all the local communities who's doing cleaning up from marine litter. So both we and the ship owner used that way of contacting all the people who's doing a lot of the work out in the field. So we used the EUA, the response units along the coast, the local communities. They have been very important. They did all the surveys, and they surveyed more than 1,000 locations. Tells them they walk a lot of seashore. And so the Oslofjord Recreation Society, they actually had, they got the working plan for us, but they followed up all the organization that did the private cleanup companies, which there are a lot of, because there are money from different sources that you can apply from. So there are quite a few companies who sort of has that as a part of their income. They could have other incomes too. So they normally do a lot of different, they could have people that are unemployed to get starting a job. They have all different types of people connected to them, but they have a core of people who's very trained, very used to working on the shoreline, how to operate boats, which is very important because this is dangerous work. It's easy to happen accidents. So they have actually done the beach cleaning. So we also were very concerned about how would this affect the environment. So we used to had to do what we call fingerprint analysis. That is very important because we had to know if these pellets that we found along the coast actually came from that container, from that production of pellets. And as you know, this is a global problem. There are pellets all over, and we also have pollution sources from factories both on the Swedish west coast and on in the Porsgrunn, Bamble area in Norway. There are a lot of old pollutions of pellets in those areas, and they have cleaned up quite a bit, but when you go in and you search the beaches close to these factories, you find also other sorts of pellets. And we were concerned about additives because the plastic I had here was very clean, was made of polystyrene, and it didn't have all the additives that comes later in the process. If you want to produce it as a hard plastic, one that can resist sun for a long time, different you put additives, or if it should be a softener. As you know, many of these additives are really bad for the environment. So we had to see if there was any additives. Luckily, there wasn't any there that we had to be especially concerned about. And we also looked at seabirds and fish, and we had a lot of eider ducks that died in the Oslofjord that spring at the same time, and they were collected to see why they died. And we also had an addition on to actually see if they had been eating and if there was a lot of pellets in their digestive tract, but we couldn't find any. So that was not, they actually didn't get enough food. It didn't have anything to do with the accident of pellets. And we also collected a lot of fish, small size fish, because on those they could actually block up the digestive system. So Norway has a very long program of monitoring the fish population in Skagerrak. And because we had that program, we sort of used the fish that they collect, and they would see if there was any effects, and they couldn't find anything. And as you see, there's a link at the bottom of this slide where you can go in and actually find the reports. They are not in English, all of them, but they have English summary, so you can figure out the main findings of those reports. So see all the places we took field samples. We had to go broadly out to see if we got some from Sweden too, just to be sure that it was from the same accidents. So, and you see those two red ones, they were not from this source, it was not the same ones. So we found other pellets, but you do that all over the world. This is a global problem, but not in the amounts in Norway, and we have never seen this in Norway before in these amounts. You see there from the fish and what they did. I don't want to go into it, but it's a lot of fish, 623 fish, 9 different species were tested. So there are no traces of plastic were found in any of the samples. The seabirds, you see the eider ducks that, and as was mentioned, there are environmental quite a lot problems connected to the Oslo fjord, and there's been a lot of focus on that in the last years. And with these dying eider ducks, we also took 50 of those and went truly through the digestive system and pellets. But there was only two. One had one in the bill and one had swallowed one, but there was no, you couldn't explain the increased mortality that we saw. Back to the operation, we had more than 1,000 locations reported, and they all have been surveyed, as I said. And of those, there was 434 that had so much that we defined them as a working position that had to be cleaned. And if it was smaller amounts, when they were surveying, they would collect it. They would bring some light tools with them so they could pick up small amounts. That very often happened. So as we also saw, that it was very important to have a fast response, which is a bit bad if that's, as now we know that this is defined as acute pollution. If we had started as soon as they showed up, I'm sure we would have cleaned up even more, because then we would put more resources into the effort in the first weeks when they were more collected, they were easier to pick up because they weren't down in ground and down in the vegetation. So we saw that the tide, heavy rain, storms remobilized the pellets. These were places that we had found a lot of pellets, and we came back after a storm or very heavy rain. A lot of pellets had disappeared. So this is, we also knew that we could never collect all of it. So we tried to set a limit for how much we should clean. And when we made these decisions, we knew what sort of additives there was in the plastic. And it has been a lesson learned for us, actually, that plastic is very different. Some plastic are much worse for the environment than other types of plastic. And I think that hasn't been addressed very much when it comes to cleaning up litter. And there are the additives that are actually worse for the environment. So,
Rune,
yeah.
I'm just keeping an eye on time. Could you maybe begin to wind out maybe in the next minute or so?
Yeah,
that would be great. Thank you.
So we said that the efforts you should limit. If a man worked the whole day, 8-hour day, then you should actually say that you should collect more than half a liter per day. If you didn't find enough, then you had to move on to the next site. So yeah, this is the last one. Fast response, very important. Collect the large amounts first before they remobilize. You have to prioritize those as most important for the environment, where you know there's a lot of fish feeding or a lot of seabirds. You have to test out different methods the whole time, and even if a method didn't work very well on a sand beach that's dry in summer, it may work very well on a wet, heavy sand in the wintertime. You have to see what sort of plastic you're dealing with. You have to evaluate the effects it might have on the environment. And we need these local teams that we have used, they are very important to use in the future too. So we can also use for oil spill response. So that we would try to get them into a contract with them and train them. And we also see that the normal approach that the Norwegian Coastal Administration do when there's a big oil spill works very well with this sort of litter. And now it is a part of thing we would handle in the future. We know that this is a part of the Pollution Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rune. If you could please stop sharing your screen, then we can invite the next speaker. At the top of your screen, there will be a button that appears.
Yeah, I just need to get out of the
Okay.
presentation mood.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Runa. We are going to shift our perspective now a little bit more towards the municipal level. So the next speaker will be Hans Arve Rognerud, who is Emergency Manager at Fredrikstad Kommune. Hans will provide us with a municipal perspective from the location where the pellets from the trans-carrier were first found, and which was a heavily impacted location. So Hans will tell us about municipal preparedness against acute pollution and the experiences from the plastic pellet and paraffin wax events in 2020. Hans, you have 10 minutes. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I could just ask if you see my presentation good enough?
Yes, we can see it, but you're not in presentation mode.
Here we go, maybe. Yeah, good. And as Rune mentioned, he has some of the same main bullet as we found down here in Fredrikstad. And the first thing I will say is actually that I start up in the job down here the May 1st this year. So actually most of this happened before I started in the job. As you say, to say something about the Fredrikstad's emergency preparedness against acute pollution and the incidents we worked with down here. I will focus on the organization, the events and key takeaways. And the plan is to start with a movie, the first movie or film, which it gave us a good overview, but I think we could go through it anyway. Oops. Let's see. Yeah, I hope this give you some picture as how it was to do the work on site out there. The organization in Norway first, as Rune mentioned, the oil spill protection and environmental preparedness model is, as we see here, with the Norwegian Coastal Administration on top, the Intermunicipal Committee of Acute Pollution, which is 32 of them, and our 356 municipalities in Norway. The EUA Østfold, they cover 12 municipalities and 6 fire departments. Fredrikstad is specialized on the sea and Sarpsborg on chemicals. They have 1 emergency manager at full time. And more local here in Fredrikstad, we have a system based on the national 4 principle with responsibility, simultaneity, proximity, and interaction. And here in green, you see how we have adapted it to suit our organization. This is the local emergency and crisis organization. The incident we discussed today has been delegated to the section of culture, environment and agriculture, the KMB as marked with red. They have their contingency plans to handle environmental responsibility. And for example, they are having our environmental risk analysis, checklist, and all our plans in the DSP SIM system. Both the municipalities and Norwegian Coastal Administration have a pollution authority. However, when the case is pollution and not littering, the NCA has a responsibility, as Runa mentioned. This makes it very important to determine what kind of material is hitting our coast. And these two incidents, the plastic pellets and kerosene wax, in cases concerning pollution, several may have a responsibility to follow up. Who ends up with the responsibility depends on what it is, the size, and if it's acute. And 3 phases who was important for us during this was the emergency phases with liquids. IUA more or less always get the warning and start concerning the next measures. They coordinate the Norwegian with the Norwegian Coastal Administration and the municipalities involved. The emergency phase solids. In case with solids, Fredrikstad often get the warnings first and do the initial assessment, and involves our own assets like IUA, Oslofjorden, Reconciliation Council, the Statsforvalter, and so on. If the source is known, we will make the polluter clean up and cover the cost. If the source is unknown and we are not able to identify it, we start the cleaning process as far as possible. And during and considering the governmental clarification, the main rule for us is if it's pollution, we can be absorbed into living organism, it's acute. And if it's big, the Norwegian Coastal Administration is the right authority to follow up. And if it's littering, not acute and not big, it's our responsibility. In both cases, we had these discussions. And to begin with, Fredrikstad was the first-hand authority. We started the cleaning and worked simultaneously with the governmental clarification. The aim of both actions were the same: clean as quick as possible to prevent prevalence and rebloomization, and find the source and impose them to cover the costs. Implementation. And the kerosene wax case, the Norwegian Coastal Administration provide financial guarantee, but Fredrikstad coordinate and cleaned up. And here we see the participants. And this all was a new situation, and we need to start thinking. At the slide here, you can see some of the methods and equipment we used and has been developed during the process. And here you can see the map and registration as the show before today. Some of the challenges. I would like to sum it up in 4 bullet points. The governmental relations, it takes time to place responsibility, and the time can be critical in the initial phase. Determining the size and possible consequences, finance and resources, and enough equipment to deal with the situation. And some of the success factors that we have the IUA able with their experience and equipment was critical. That in the Norwegian Coastal Administration provide financial guarantee and at the same point took over the responsibility. That NGOs exist with the support of authorities and other in their efforts to combat marine litter and pollution. Our schematics. That we have the Skjærgårdstjenesten and that the cooperation with Oslofjorden Friluftsråd is so well developed. And to sum it up with some of the key takeaways, financial security and governmental responsibility from Norwegian Coastal Administration. Fredrikstad has not the local, Fredrikstad as the local pollution authority does not have the experience or resources to deal with such as incidents on our own. Our ability to respond quickly, cooperation and interaction, how they were able to develop new equipment, and how we afterwards now are able to do evaluation to ensure organizational memory. Sorry. Yeah, that was fast, but I think it's inside time. So that's more or less conclude my briefing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hans. Thank you for keeping to time as well. We're actually doing well on time so far, so that's good. We're now going to shift our perspective again, this time from the public authorities and affected municipalities to that of the ship operators. So the third speaker today and the final speaker before our coffee break will be Gisle Carberó, Managing Director at Sturdy Ship Management, part of the Seatrans group of companies that also includes Sea Cargo and Seatrans chemical tankers. The group's activities include roll-on, roll-off liner shipping in the North Sea, shoreside transport, transport of chemicals, and ship management. So as an integrated shipping company, they have in-house ship owning, chartering operations, technical ship management, and crewing. Gisle will speak about their experiences of the spill of plastic noodles. Gisle, you have 15 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Oh, we can't really hear you very well. Can you increase your microphone then?
Now it's probably better.
That's much better. Thank you very much.
And you can see my screen also, I hope.
We can see your screen and we can see you.
Very good, then I will continue. We'd rather not be here because this is an incident that we every day work to prevent. So I'd rather do something else today than sit here, to be honest with you. But when this is the case, then we are very clear on what our responsibility is, and we, like the CEO of Sea Cargo said, we will and we have done what we can to clean up after us. So with those words, Sturdy Ship Management, I represent Sturdy Ship Management. It's a company in the Seatrans group. Sturdy Ship Management carry out the ship management services to the owner of Transcarrier, and the owner is, as mentioned before, Sea Cargo Ships AS. So we're an in-house ship ownership management organization dealing with ro-ro vessels like Transcarrier, but we also do chemical tankers and LPG tankers. So that briefly about the company and our role in it is that we, like I said, we do ship management on behalf of the owner, and we follow up when incidents like this happens. Timeline. I will drag you through our timeline and how our view on the situation is, and from our point of view, it is a timeline prior to the cleanup, and then it's a timeline after the cleanup, and I will try to split those two into two sort of phases of what happened. So, like it had been said, the 22nd of February last year, we departed from Rotterdam. The weather forecast was west-northwest for 6 to 7, and waves 4 to 5 meters from northwest. This is heavy weather, but it's not a weather where you choose not to sail. Before we enter into a sailing like this, there is an assessment done on board where they consider should we do additional measures to secure the cargoes, other things that we need to be aware of. Based on that, the vessel secured cargo with additional lashings. And as you can see, after we sail, the cargo lashings are rechecked, and that is also done through the night. And that is also normal when we are in heavy weather, to constantly check the lashings to see if something has shifted and something is moving, so that the forces are too big. That is done during nighttime. Is done like the lamps, the deck lamps are switched on, and we check that all the containers and all the trailers on deck are still secured. So from our investigation, there is nothing done wrong when it comes to preparing for sailing, preparing for voyage, and the number of lashing put on each container was according to the approved lashing manual. So we haven't found any deviations from our system in that respect. Then during the night at 1:35, the vessel was hit by several large waves, which made the containers shift. What happened then is that the master arrives on the bridge. He turns on the deck lights and he observes that some containers have shifted. The course of the vessel is changed, and the crew enter deck and tries to secure the cargo as much as possible. I will show a different slide later, just illustrating that even better. Several containers had shifted, only one was damaged. The vessel continues the voyage. During the day, or during the next day, we notify the authorities. 24th of February, we arrive Risavika in Stavanger. Then we also notify the port authorities in Stavanger that we have a damaged container on board. And because of the damage, and because we have some spill on deck still of the plastic noodles, we inform them that during the offloading there might be a local spill into the sea. We didn't have that, so there was no spill, but in any case we informed them about the damaged container. The container is put on shore. We informed the owner of the cargo about that their cargo is damaged, and it's put on shore for further checks. I will touch on that with lessons learned later also. Like it's been said, the first observation was done in middle of March. And on the 24th of April 2020, we receive a request for support from the cargo owner, which was then informed or been involved via Norner, and had got the information from them. So we were unaware of any pollution in the area until the 24th of April. Unfortunately, but that's the truth. We were not aware about the consequences of this spill until the 24th of April. Like already said, 29th of April, we issued a statement saying that this probably comes from our vessel Transcarrier after the incident on the 22nd of February. And we stated also there that this responsibility is ours, and we will follow up. And like already said, 17th 7th of May, there was a cleanup order from the authorities, formally stating that it's our responsibility to clean up. On the image on the left side, sorry, you see all the containers and cargo on board that shifted during this waves or stronger waves that hit the vessel. The green one where you have the arrow, that was the container that was damaged. Loading of these vessels are done taking several measures into account. And one of the measures is that we need to protect as much cargo as possible. Some of the cargo on deck here are normal trailers with tarpaulin covers. They are exposed to waves and wind in a much stronger way than a container. So we try to protect those cargoes. We also try to put the heavy containers in front because that reduces the movement of the vessel. And that's why this container was put where it was on the very front of the vessel on starboard side. And as you can see on the right picture, the vessel continued until the incident. Then we made a change in the course, secured the cargo, and continued the voyage northwards towards Risavika. This, you have seen this picture also, probably all of you. This is the damage, the punctured container where things spilled out, and on the right side you can see the location of the container after the incident. It was not safe for any of the crew to actually go between the vessel and the container to try to close the gap or to close the opening. It was heavy weather, so we could only secure the cargo as best we could, and then take the vessel into a safe area where we could do more. Yeah. So then, our experiences prior to incident. What could we have done, and what should we work on to prevent this from happening again? Our conclusion is, firstly, there is no legal requirements for stowage or packaging of plastic pellets or plastic noodles. This is handled as a regular cargo. There is no requirement for double barriers. There is no requirement where you should stow it. There is no identification of the pellets as a hazardous material or as a pollutant or anything like that. So this lack of rules when it comes to the carriage of this cargo is definitely something, has definitely an effect or a consequence or a reason for why this happened. Comparing to our chemical tankers, there are a lot more regulations and a lot more barriers in place to prevent spills or pollution from those cargoes. So that's the first learning of ours. The second thing is we are ISO 14001 approved, which means we shall identify our environmental aspects. Potential spills of plastic noodles were not identified by us as in our assessment of the environmental aspects. So in our approval or in our assessment of where do we influence the environment, a potential spill of plastic pellets was not assessed. That is also a contributing factor and something we have learned Then the third one, there were no specific company procedures for transportation of plastic pellets. We put those containers where it was best from an operational point of view, which I said, front of the vessel where we protect other cargo, and where the stability of the vessel is optimized for with regards to the movement of the vessel. So there were no specific, there was nothing said about this. And then we have also looked on what about how we operate, what about our actions, and like I said, this assessment done prior to departure was done properly and according to routines. But we underestimated the possibility of encountering even larger waves. And that is something we work on and always have worked on, and we will continue working on. This assessment that we make during the voyage. Should we change course? Should we slow down? Should we do something else during sailing? And weather can change quickly in the North Sea during winter time, and weather is, as a rule, the weather is bad during winter time. So this ability to make correct decisions during the voyage, that's extremely important and something we constantly work on. Continuing to after the incident, and I have brought two examples is from our contingency log, and the first one, 24th of February, we have written in the log that last sentence, the amount spilled will be estimated on arrival and reported to the authorities. That was never done. The container was put on shore, and then it ended up sort of in a black hole almost, where the cargo owner didn't want to accept the cargo, and the shipper had delivered it. So no one really took responsibility of the container when it was there to check the amount spilled. So it wasn't follow up from our side. Second was 26th of February. Then the contingency case from our side was closed. And that was also a big mistake, because at that time we didn't know the consequences of the spill, and we didn't have the full picture. So the timeline for cleanup, contingency case was reopened, of course, when we learned about this. Norwegian Coastal Administration established a team and took charge on the 7th of May. And then also the cooperation with Oslofjorden Friluftsråd started. And I would like to underscore the importance of this good cooperation with them, and also with the other companies that were involved in the cleanup. It has been, I think it's been a lesson learned for many of the actors here to learn that we need to use the resources available. So this cooperation has been very good from day one. Doesn't mean we haven't disagreed from time to time, but we have always found good and solutions to it. Then the next one, we established together with all the players a technology team to develop methods and systems for how to clean up this. That's also very important, and what we have learned a lot from, to bring the competencies together and to learn. Then we employed a captain, Helge Hals. He was on our on-site involvement from the owner, and he also played a very important role in coordinating our efforts into this case. And then from this period until 31st of May this year, and also continuing today, the cleanup has continued with weekly meetings and follow-up and a lot of discussions. And then the 31st of May it was closed, and but then after the 31st of May we have entered a new agreement with Oslofjorden Friluftsråd saying that if there is anything, we will clean up that also, even if the state order is closed. So to sum up the experiences, the rules must be there. They are not present today. This risk assessment when it comes to voyage planning and also change weather conditions need to be improved. This underestimating the consequence, that's a lesson learned from us and something we take very seriously. Then our experience also the importance to take responsibility and be involved as a responsible party for the pollution. Use the competences that are already there, very important, and also to continue the work to reduce the risk for reoccurrence. And we have also agreed meetings with Ship Owners Association and with authorities to try to develop these rules that we need for establishing those rules, basically. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gisle. I was really struck by the first thing you said, which was that you would really rather not be here today, and it really contrasts with what I said. Well, the first thing that I said, which is that I'm really pleased to be here today. My perspective is that when problems happen, it gives me optimism to see that different actors, different people are actually coming together to address them. And I have a lot of respect for that work as well. So yes, of course, we're talking about something that we all wish hadn't happened. But I think it's really, really good to have events like this where we do share experiences and lessons can be learned. So that is why, from my perspective, I'm actually pleased that this is happening today, and I'm pleased that I'm here. I'm pleased that you're all here. And with that, thank you again, Gisle, for that presentation. Thanks to all the speakers so far. It's now 11 minutes past 11. We're going to have a 10-minute break now. So let's reconvene at 21 minutes past. So you can mute your microphones, turn off your cameras, go away and get a cup of coffee, and we'll see you back here in 10 minutes. coffee. We will continue on now until 1 o'clock. Before we go on to the next presentation and before I introduce the next speakers, I would like to just highlight, we noticed that there are some questions in the Q&A that came up. We won't have time to address questions today. So if you do have questions that occur to you at any point during the presentations today, you can send them to Trina and Nikolai. So, you know, we will be pleased to answer questions after the event today. So just so you're aware of that. So we did see the question, we're not ignoring it, but we won't be able to address the question today. We're now going to hear from the Norwegian Maritime Authority. That's the administrative and supervisory authority in matters related to safety of life, health, material values, and the environment on vessels flying the Norwegian flag and vessels in Norwegian waters. So we have two speakers, Espen Blomvik, who's advisor on legislation and international relations, and Irmelin Skilstrand, advisor on international environment. I think the first person to speak will be Espen. Espen and Irmelin will speak on regulatory considerations of the spill of plastic pellets from the Transcarrier. Espen and Irmelin, you have 20 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Louise. I think you summarized our role, the Norwegian the role of the Norwegian Maritime Authority in your presentation of us. But we will get a little bit back to that later in an in-depth presentation of our work tasks. Yes, we might just start. I can start by presenting myself. My name is Espen Blomvik. I hold a Master of Laws degree from the University of Oslo 3 years ago, and I have since then, November the same year, worked as a legal advisor in the NMA at the section for legislation and contracts. I work mainly with revision of regulations related to ship safety and environmental matters, although I have main focus on the latter. And I have also been a member of the Norwegian contingent to the Marine Environment Protection Committee, the MEPC, in the International Maritime Organization, which is the UN specialized agency for shipping. We will get a bit back to MEPC matters later in our presentation. So that's it for now. I also do some follow-up on accidents and violations through imposition of public sanctions and cooperation of law enforcement. So I have dealt with quite a few incidents related to pollution emissions, so from ships. So Irmelin, you might continue to present yourself.
So my name is Irmelin G and I've got a master's degree in organic chemistry from Bergen. After uni, I worked a bit for a petroleum additives company and have since January 2020 worked for the Norwegian Maritime Authority, and I work in the section for international environment work, which means I mostly work with things related to IMO. So I also participate in the Norwegian contingent to committees and subcommittees in the IMO, and also Arctic Council when it's stuff related to environmental matters. And my focus areas are oil pollution, transport of harmful substances, and air pollution. And occasionally I also work on projects for revision of national regulations related to ship environmental matters, but mostly it's IMO work.
Thank you. I think we can continue then. Sorry. Yes, as I said in the beginning, or as presented by Louise, the Norwegian Maritime Authority, we're an administrative and supervisory authority, a subordinate to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries, and with regards to environmental matters, we're subordinate to the Ministry of Climate and Environment, and we are the supervisory authority in matters related to safety of life, health, and material values and environment on vessels flying the Norwegian flag in foreign ships in Norwegian waters. And I think really how the NMA's work tasks can probably be described through actually a description of the jurisdiction of the NMA. Some things up, there's 3 different variants of jurisdiction executed against ships. The first is flag state jurisdiction. The NMA has a follow-up. We do control certifications on any matters related to construction, equipment, crewing on vessels that's flying the Norwegian flag, vessels registered in the Norwegian ship registries. Moreover, we have something that's called port state jurisdiction, which is control of foreign vessel that's have a port of call in Norwegian port, and what the Norwegian Maritime Authority will control on foreign vessels is pretty much if they are compliant with international rules and standards. You could look at the port state control and port state jurisdiction as the flag states control with each other, where you really log things up, whether a ship from a particular country flying a particular flag, are they in compliance with international rules and standards. These are shared into for Norway's matter, we are a member of something that's called the Paris MOU, which is a cooperation between flag states where we report our findings through port state controls, and we will make a list on the performance of ships from various countries in which, based on their performance, they will be put on a white list, gray list, or black list. I guess it's quite needless to say that you want to be on the white list. If you're on the gray or black list, you may be subject to more frequent inspections, and in the event that you're not in compliance with international rules and standards, you also may be subject to sanctions, detentions, so on. And in serious cases, one might also consider to report the incident to the police. This jurisdiction follows from the Norwegian ship safety. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention the last one there, which is coastal state jurisdiction. It's pretty much the same thing as port state jurisdiction. One can control pretty much the same things, although it's not happening while the vessel is in port. It will happen while the vessel is within waters that falls in under Norway's geographical jurisdiction. The Norwegian Ship Safety and Security Act, so it's stated in Section 2, the Act applies to Norwegian and foreign vessels. We have full jurisdiction over Norwegian flagged vessels anywhere in the world. Foreign vessels will be within our territorial waters, exclusive economic zone, and on the continental shelf. The Norwegian Ship Safety and Security Act implements a wide range of legal instruments adopted by the IMO, as well as the European Union and the EEA.
The international legal instruments, as mentioned, they are not implemented in the Act itself, but it's in pertinent regulations given in accordance with the Act. So it's a wide range of different regulations under the Norwegian Ship Safety and Security Act that covers. Yeah. When it comes to the incident with the trans carrier, just want to come up first with some brief facts about the vessel. It's owned by the Sturdy Ship Management AS, which is registered in Norway. The ISM manager is the Sea Cargo Skips AS, which is also registered in Norway. The commercial manager is the Sea Trans AS, which is also registered in Norway, although the vessel was flying the flag of the Bahamas. As we all know, the discharge of plastic pellets did not happen, it happened outside Denmark, so we were not inside the Norwegian territorial waters, EEZ or the continental shelf. The pellets was brought to the Norwegian coastline with the ocean current. So to summarize things up, as the vessel was not Norwegian, the discharge did not happen inside Norwegian's geographical jurisdiction. The whole incident is actually outside the scope of our authority. So this is really an incident that the NMA can't deal with directly, although we have somehow been involved more or less from the sideline as an advisor on certain matters. It was just before the break, Gisle from Sturdy gave a presentation on the matters related to the securing and stowing of the cargo. Just want to give a brief presentation really about the relevant international legal framework here. We can start off with the SOLAS Convention, which it's a huge instrument, legal instrument that contains minimum safety standards in the construction, equipment, and operation of merchant ships. In Chapter 6 in the SOLAS, you will find requirements for the stowage and securing of all types of cargo and cargo containers except liquids and gases in bulk. The chapter is ratified by the Bahamas, so it's indeed applicable for the trans carrier vessel. In the Chapter 6 Regulation 5, it stated that cargo units such as containers shall be loaded, stowed, and secured to prevent hazard to the ship and persons on board, as well as loss of cargo overboard. And the stowing and securing of cargo shall be done in accordance with a cargo securing manual, which is approved by the vessel's flag state. Stowage and securing of cargo is further elaborated in a code that's given in accordance with SOLAS, the Code of Safe Practice of Cargo Stowage and Securing, which really sets up a list of rules and principles related to safe stowage and securing of cargo. The rules is more elaborative. It describes really what shall be done to secure cargo when certain incidents occur, such as heavy weather. And there's also recommendations on actions to be taken when certain actions has occurred, such as the shifting of cargo. As I said a few minutes ago, I this incident was really outside our authority, although we've been provided some information about what really happened here. And as far as I can say, we really do not have any reasons to believe that there is violations of a violation of any of the rules that I have mentioned here. Another instrument that's worth mentioning here is the International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code, better known as the Imd G Code. As we have, after this incident, actually identified some matters in the code that should be addressed, and although this will be presented to you by Irmelin. So Irmelin, please go ahead.
Yeah. So the Imd G Code, together with MARPL Annex 3, the presentation, yeah. Okay, together with MARPL Annex 3 are the regulations that sets provisions for transport of dangerous goods on ships in packaged form. Plastic pellets do not actually meet the requirements for being classed as dangerous goods according to the Imd G Code. It specifically doesn't meet the requirements of being classed as a marine pollutant class 9. So, and as a result, it doesn't need to meet the transport requirements that is contained in the Imd G Code. And so the reason that it's not classed as a marine pollutant is that the Imd G Code classifies marine pollutant according to their acute and chronic toxicity, and it doesn't capture things like plastic pellets, which has a different type of environmental effect. And the plastic pellets, as you heard earlier, they that were released from the Transcarrier incident were in a container that were placed at the far end of the weather deck. So the container was very exposed. And the Imd G Code has stowage requirements for marine pollutants that stipulate that containers shall preferably be placed under deck, alternatively on well-protected decks or on board in sheltered areas of exposed decks. In addition, it also has some requirements with the type of containers you can use. So this means that if plastic pellets had been classed as a marine pollutant according to the Imd G Code, then it probably would have been stowed differently, which could have prevented the incident on the Transcarrier. Next slide. Yeah, and plastic pellets, since they are a raw material of plastic consumer products, vast amounts of plastic pellets are continuously being transported around the world on ships. And the Transcarrier spill was not a unique incident. There's been quite a few incidents around the world of accidental spills of plastic pellets, and the GSAMP Working Group 43, which is, so the GSAMP is a expert group in the IMO, has estimated, they did some work on plastic pollution and estimated that there is an accidental spill of plastic pellets on the scale of 230,000 tons annually. So it's quite a big problem. And I've listed some incidents that have occurred here. So this year there was an enormous spill. The Coastal Administration mentioned this too. So in Sri Lanka, outside of Sri Lanka, there was a spill of 11,000 tons of plastic pellets. And obviously the Transcarrier incident in last year spilled 13.2 tons. And some other examples is an incident outside South Africa in 2018, where 49 tons were spilt, and outside of Hong Kong in 2012, 168 tons of plastic pellets were spilt into the ocean. So at the meeting, there's a meeting coming up next week, MEPC 77, an IMO meeting, where one of the topics that will be discussed is a proposal to reevaluate the classification of plastic pellets in the Imd G Code. Hopefully we will get to discuss this. There's quite a lot of other matters being discussed at this meeting, including different GHG, greenhouse gas emission regulation work, and that tends to take up a lot of time. But hopefully this will make the agenda. I mean, it's on the agenda, but hopefully there'll be time to discuss it. And Norway is then proposing to make an intervention at the meeting to suggest that, well, supporting the proposal that we should reevaluate the classification of plastic pellets in the Imd G Code, and then propose as a short-term measure that CCC, which is a subcommittee, that they should be instructed by the committee to develop a circular, first of all, with storage requirements for plastic pellets and similar substances, so that they can be in line with the storage requirements that applies to marine pollutants in the Imd G Code. And then as a long-term measure, then we should start a process to amend the criteria for the identification of harmful substances in packaged form, so that plastic pellets could fall under that classification in the Imd G Code. If this is done, if then plastic pellet is considered a dangerous goods and a marine pollutant, then another benefit of this is that plastic pellets will be recognized under the HNS Convention as a harmful substance, which would ensure that when this convention enters into force, because it hasn't entered into force yet, but when it does, that compensation is then given to those who suffer loss or damage resulting from future incidents involving plastic pellets.
Irmelin, or do you have lots more to say? I just got a warning that we're soon to be cut off here. So
I'm done.
I'm done.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. To sum things up, the incident regarding Transcarrier was outside the NMA's jurisdiction, and although there's certain aspects regarding the Imd G Code that will be proposed to be looked into at the MEPC next week, although if regardless of the classification in the Imd G Code, the plastic pellets will still have to be dealt with by the flag or coastal states. So this would have been outside our authority whatsoever. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Espen and Irmelin, for that presentation. We now shift our perspective again to a non-profit viewpoint. Our next speaker will be Florina Lachman, beach cleaning coordinator at the West Coast Trust in Sweden. The West Coast Trust manages over 280 nature reserves on the Swedish West Coast and facilitates beach cleaning operations together with coastal municipalities. Florina will talk to us about the management of pollution events on the Swedish West Coast. Florina, you have 15 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, but you're not in presentation mode.
Oh, of course. Does it work like this?
I'm still seeing the same screen I was before. There's I don't know if my screen is frozen, but I'm still not seeing your slides properly.
What about now?
Now, yes. That's
great.
Perfect. That's perfect.
Great. Thank you for the help. And thank you for inviting us here. I'm going to present a bit of the Swedish perspective on the problem. And so we're going to go back to more like hands-on problems with the pellets. So just a few words about the West Coast Trust, West Coast Cities in Swedish. It's a bit similar to the Oslofjordens Friluftsråd, as we are also a trust, and we've been founded in 1962, and we mostly work with nature conservation and manage nature reserves around the area here on the Swedish West Coast, and also facilitate like an active outdoor life. And about the beach cleaning, I don't know if you see the you don't see the black Zoom thing on my presentation, I hope, but that you can read. So with the beach cleaning,
it's all good.
Yes, great, thanks.
All good.
We've been working since several years together with the municipalities along the West Coast. So it's 12 municipalities that work together. It's a cooperation where we exchange knowledge and practices about how to best do the cleanup. I guess it's similar in Norway that we have a lot of marine litter washed ashore here. So it's been regularly cleaned up, and we collect 200 to 300 tons of plastic per year. And the work is financed both by the municipalities, but also we have funds from the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency. And the work is mainly organized in a beach cleaning map that you can see on the presentation. So we are like used to reporting things on a map, I would say. And this is used to coordinate both the municipality cleanup teams. And we have a few contractors to help the municipalities, but also a lot of volunteers. So everyone reports on this map for the regular beach cleaning. And now on to the pellets. These are pictures from the Swedish West Coast. We found also a lot of pellets here, and it was mostly the municipalities as well that looked through the beaches and really did like inventations to see how much pellets do they find. And it shifted a lot during the month, like when we asked in spring, when we got notifications about the pellets, they were a lot more concentrated, and then later during the year they were more spread out. I guess you had similar experiences in Norway, that the waves distribute them further. And then also some people talked about the paraffin, or someone said kerosene wax, that was found later in 2020, where we had a similar situation again. So there was again like an acute pollution event that happened, and municipalities that looked how much paraffin do they find on the coast, and how it should be cleaned up. And I mean, here in the timeline, we have heard most about it. Just to if you look on the 30th of April, what I heard from Länsstyrelsen, they got contacted by the police, and they got notice of the pellets, and then we from the West Coast Trust had contact with Länsstyrelsen and the Swedish agency, like for, I don't know the English name, Havs- och vattenmyndigheten, and the Oslofjordens Friluftsråd since then. And we got both the map where pellets were reported, and information about how it could be best cleaned up from Norway. And how it was handled in Sweden is that the pellets were collected during regular beach cleanings. And we estimate that the amount of pellets washed ashore in Sweden are 2.5 ton. And that's based on the observations that were reported on the pellets map. This is a bit of a comparison between how it's been handled in Norway and in Sweden. As we heard, there was a very well established routine and a very big response in Norway with extra cleanings, with like Kystverket and the Oslofjordens Friluftsråd, both for the pellets and the paraffin. They did extra cleanings, well organized work, and a good support from the municipalities. And in Sweden, we cleaned up what we found during the regular beach cleanings that are done every year. So it was not classified as an acute pollution here, and there were no rescue services that helped to clean up, but it was just assessed as marine litter. And here you see the map that's been shown before too, that Fredrikstad shared with us, and where there were quite some reports from pellets here on the coast as well. And on this map, then on both the pictures that we got from the map And the amount of pellets estimated by the people who found pellets on different areas, we estimated the amount that we think was washed ashore here. But it's of course an estimation, so it's hard to know. Yeah, you're well aware of, all of you, I guess, that it's hard to assess like a whole coastline. So we did our best to try to get an idea about the amount. And we, from the Swedish West Coast Trust, we experienced that there is a good contact between different authorities. I mentioned the Swedish Agency for Marine and Water Management, that we were in contact with Länsstyrelsen, and also the we have an agency that's called MSB, that's for like, it's the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency, and Keep Sweden Tidy, that we all had some kind of contact also with Oslofjordens Friluftsråd and Kystverket, and from Denmark with Chemo, that there is a communication between the Nordic countries, and we were thankful for all the information we got from Norway, and also for the map that helped us really to see where the problem was and how much, and to try to get an idea about the situation. But we also wish for an improved handling inside Sweden. So there is a bit of unclear responsibilities as far as we experienced it. When I got the message about, well, we have a lot of pellets on the coast, I didn't really know who to contact, and I contacted my contact persons, and we tried to find like, okay, what do we do? But I experienced that it was quite a slow communication. So therefore, we would really wish for like an established contact list and a best practice routine for acute pollution events. And I also talked to Havs- och vattenmyndigheten, and they said that, yeah, we are working on this, and we will try to take a lot of the lessons from today to try to work on a future solution, so that we can also feel as well prepared as Norway at some point. That would be amazing. So these are the experiences that we had. If you have questions, you can contact me, and also other persons who are with us today in the but not speaking, from the municipalities. That's how we handle it in Sweden. And thanks again for all the information that we got from Norway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Florina. Thank you for that perspective from Sweden, and thank you for keeping well within time as well. That's always appreciated from a moderator's perspective. Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Ryan Metcalf, National Coordinator for Chemo Denmark. Chemo is an international network of more than 80 local municipalities around the North Sea and Baltic Seas that work together to protect Northern Europe's marine environment. And Chemo Denmark has 18 member municipalities. So Ryan will talk about marine litter and plastic pollution incidents on the Danish west coast. Ryan, you have 15 minutes. Please go ahead. You are muted, Ryan. We still can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I had pressed my presentation before I unmuted myself.
Great.
Try this again. Can you see my presentation now?
No, we can see you, but we can't see your screen.
Okay, sorry about that. I guess I have to do this in order here.
Okay, so we can see your slide layout.
Yes, here it goes. There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, it's working. Great. Yes, thank you very much. My name is Ryan Metcalf. I'm the National Coordinator for Chemo in Denmark, and Chemo is an international and national organization. It's a network of coastal municipalities. We work together to create a better marine environment and coastal environment there's many aspects of marine pollution that we tackle. At the moment, we're over 80 municipalities, and you also mentioned that we're 18 in Denmark. We have municipalities around the North Sea in many countries and also in the Baltic Sea. The organization itself was founded in 1990, and we've been working on marine pollution issues since. In the early 2000s, we started working more on marine litter with plastic pollution. We were one of the first organizations to look at the economic impacts of marine litter on coastal municipalities, and participated in a European project called Save the North Sea from 2002 to 2004, where we tackled the issue of marine pollution, marine litter on our coasts, and established fishing for litter to remove litter from the sea with fishermen, and also create more awareness about this problem. So I'm going to talk a little bit about beach cleaning in Denmark and monitoring, because we really didn't have too much an effect from the Pellets incident. But I'm going to focus a little bit on what we do know, a little bit on paraffin pollution, and another event that could have had wide consequences for all of the northern countries. So marine litter in Denmark on the west coast, we have an average about 1,000 tons of plastic pollution, of marine litter that washes up on our shores per year. And that's a survey that Chemo did from 2010 to 2013. But the last couple of years, we've only had about half that amount. And that's data that we've gotten from Keep Denmark Clean or Keep Denmark Tidy, where they've noticed that the pollution has been less. We tend to get a lot of pollution when there's storm events from the west, blowing these lighter objects that are floating in the water onto the west coast of Denmark. So if the correct wind direction and the correct currents are correct, the ones that push litter and materials onto our shores are that way, then we get more pollution than at other times. But we've noticed the last few years that we've had fewer large pieces of debris, and there have been actually quite a few more volunteers cleaning our beaches. So this is a movement that's growing. So we've had some different incidents in municipalities, and some of that I'll be talking about a little bit later. Keep Denmark Tidy has helped to try and promote volunteerism in Denmark by expanding an initiative about these boxes. Oh, sorry. We've placed boxes along the coast that has created a standardized concept to promote or nudge people to remove plastic litter from the beaches. So there's quite a few people that are aware of this pollution that is washing up on the beaches. There's 2 organizations that have started to recycle some of this litter, make products out of it, and also create awareness locally. We have a group called Race for the Oceans that have been traveling the coast, raising awareness with a relay all the way up the coast. Our Navy has, sorry, get that again, a project called Havmiljøvogter, where they've been placing boxes along the coast with garbage bags in them, so people can easily get a garbage bag and help out with marine pollution. And we in Chemo have our own coastal lottery. So there are quite many people on the coast, and they should be aware if there's a large pollution event. I myself do some monitoring for OSPAR. I have 2 reference beaches, one in Imd, which is closer to the southwest, and then one all the way up in Skagen. So the pictures that I'm showing here are just one of the days that I was out monitoring. We monitor 100 meters of beach And this was the first time I was out on a skiing beach about four or 5 years ago. And all these things washed up within the 100 meters. And they washed up together with a lot of biological material. So that's what we've been observing, is that when there is all this biological material, we tend to get a lot more plastic pollution. So it could be that they're floating around together in pockets of light materials out in the North Sea. With regards to paraffin, it's been mentioned a few times, both in Norway and in Sweden. The west coast of Denmark tends to get quite a few of these events each year. And Chemo's been pushing awareness about this issue for at least a decade and trying to get some changes made, which have lately gone through. So from the period from 2009 to 2020, we've recorded 58 major pollution events with paraffin, with an overall cost to 11 million Danish crowns. In Denmark, we're very fortunate that paraffin pollution is on par with oil pollution. So the national government reimburses municipalities for the cleanup costs. The worst years for this so far have been 2012 and 2016, where it's been over 3 million kroner per year for reimbursement of these events. And in 2016, that was the first time that we have recorded paraffin pollution on our eastern coast in the municipality of Gullborgsund. And actually, I also think that at that time there was an event in Sweden. It was in the Baltic region that happened. But thankfully, we were able to, through many years of lobbying through the Danish government and through OSPAR and HELCOM, get the IMO to change MARPOL. So from the 1st of January 2021, they will have to, or they have to send their tank washings out, discharge water at the port instead of discharging it out into the sea. So by tracking this for the last couple of years, we've only had 2 events in 2020 and only small pieces of paraffin washed up on the shore in 2021. With regards to the pellets, I guess we have been very lucky in Denmark. It didn't seem to affect our coast very much. And somehow this has bypassed. It could have been a combination of factors. It could have been that we didn't get the storms that have washed it up in our beaches. It could have been that it was in the winter time, so there was less people out, municipal workers or visitors on the beach. But we do have these activities that are happening. We have organizations that are aware of this kind of pollution, and it wasn't being reported. So the authorities first got reports of this late. I actually, the first time I was made aware of it was through Oslofjordens Friluftsråd, where I was contacted to try and map some of this pollution. And by that time, there wasn't very much to find. So we were not aware and we didn't look for it at the beginning. And then there was very few reports when we did get the information. So it may have bypassed us. It could have gotten, some of it could have gotten covered by sand, and some of it could have gotten displaced through time and floated back to, or floated over to Norway and Sweden. I am finding some pockets of nurdles through my the beach cleaning and through my what's it called, OSPAR monitoring, but it's very little. The one event I want to focus a little bit more on is something that could have affected all of our coastlines. And there was a release of biocarriers from a plant, a salmon farm, in a place called Hvide Sande. If you see the map down in the corner, it's in Ringkøbing Fjord, which is kind of the middle of Jutland on the west coast. It was an accidental release from their waste treatment plant, where 500,000 biocarriers were released into the fjord. And that was probably lucky that it was released into the fjord area, because this is not the first time that this has happened for this company. They also had pollution events in 2018 and 2019. And you can see what the biocarriers look like here. They're just very small, round pieces of plastic that are used to increase the surface area of bacteria in their plant, their wastewater. So this, when it did happen, it became quite the sensational story. The media covered it, and the company reacted quite quickly because it was getting so much press. So they coordinated with the local municipality to set some cleanup events. And the municipality also did make a similar mapping like Oslofjordens for the pellets. So it was widely reported, and the cleanup was very successful. So if you could see on this map, the hotspots of where these things were happening, where the biocarriers were washing up, was mostly inside the fjord around the plant, but it did also escape into the North Sea, and we were finding biocarriers all the way up the fjord, all the way up the coast. I even found them on my reference beach up in Skien. But a quick action and a lot of volunteers stopped the spread. But now we're finding some of it is still washing up, so it could be from sunken biocarriers. So if you do find some of these black pieces on your coasts, I would like to know as well. And I did have some communication with Oslofjordens Friluftsråd at the time to let them know that this might be an issue. So what happened afterwards was that the municipality of Ringkøbing-Skjern was in to talk to the company and see how they could prevent this. And they came up with some solutions where they put this internal barrier into the system so that the biocarriers should not be escaping from their waste treatment system into the fjord. So they have different, it's a series of catchments before it gets to the fjord. This is a barrel type of filter that they put between the water treatment and the outflow pipe. And then on the outflow pipe, they've secured their netting as well. The netting had been torn through frost and winds that winter that it happened. So they're also having they hired people to do some more cleaning, and they've, in cooperation with a local company called Omhu, they do a monthly survey of the fjord area to see if they can catch more of these biocarriers. So if we have some takeaways from some of these incidents, prevention at the source is something that we need to look at. If the municipality had reacted preventatively with this company, they could have maybe caught these biocarriers before it became a problem, since they were aware that it had happened before. I think personally that we need to have more emphasis of awareness on plastics with the municipality, where when they do their environmental permissions and control, they have a stronger focus on this problem, and maybe connect it to the plastic industry's clean sweep program. We need someone to take the lead when there is this kind of an event, some sort of authority to coordinate the monitoring and cleanup. So we need to define who has the responsibility and who can mobilize the resources. Where are the resources and who can mobilize them? Then, as in this incident here, we need to follow up to make changes so that this doesn't happen again. And like Florina said, local authorities need protocols for acute plastic pollution. So these protocols are very timely, and we should be able to put those together so that they know how to act if this happens. And then as well, we need wide awareness of these protocols and that they do exist. So yeah, that's what I have to say today. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Thank you. We now move on to our last presentation for today. Our last presentation will be by Thomas Sturgeon, Technical Advisor at ITOPF. ITOPF is a membership organization that is maintained by the world's ship owners and their insurers on a non-profit basis to promote effective response to maritime spills of oil, chemicals, and other substances. And Thomas will speak about lessons learned from recent incidents. Thomas, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the intro. Can you see my screen and is it in presenter view?
Yes, and we can hear you.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. As said, I'm a technical advisor for ITOPF, and amongst other services, we respond to marine pollution incidents, both on-site and remotely. Our aim is to promote best practice and provide scientific and experience-based advice to assist states and organizations when conducting a response. So to set some context, I suppose, with approximately 80% of global trade by volume being transported by ships, maritime trade is often quoted as being the backbone of global trade and the global economy. But unfortunately, as we know, cargo spills do occur. Over a 12-year period, 1,380 containers are lost overboard every year. And while the size of container ships have been increasing over the past 50 years, the number of crew per vessel has been decreasing. Concerningly, in 2020, there was reportedly one shipboard fire every 2 weeks and a major fire every 60 days. Additionally, the demand and production of plastics continues to steadily rise. So as a consequence, there continues to be a risk of spills, and recently we have seen an increase in the spills of plastic pellets, as previously discussed by the other lecturers. So, and just to emphasize that these are the primary feedstock for the manufacture of most plastic products. So the lessons learned in this presentation will focus mostly on plastic spills of plastic pellets, which are also known interchangeably as plastic resin sometimes, or nurdles, and they have various other names. So this picture is of the Express Pearl, which was a ship that got into difficulty in Sri Lanka this year, and with a fire. And this is the same vessel several days later after a considerable firefighting efforts. So to provide a few examples of past incidents, this slide presents some of the cases where plastics, among other substances, have unfortunately been released into the marine environment. From the top left to the bottom right, you have the MSC Susanna, the Kami, 2 images from the Express Pearl, and finally the MSC Chitra, which is the bottom right. And here you can see the geographic spread of some of the key incidents that have occurred since 1998 involving plastic pollution, which ITOPF's been involved in to some degree. That's either on site or remotely, or both. So what lessons have we learned from these cases? Well, first and foremost, as previously has been mentioned, prevention is better than cure. According to the National Cargo Bureau, the misdeclaration of cargo and the improper stowage of containers appears to be a problem. For responders, this makes container cleanup that bit more difficult. Plastic pellets are not classified as an Imd G cargo, as we've heard, and therefore there's no specific rules for this cargo type. However, some carriers have voluntarily adopted best practice guidance for the carriage of nurdles. For example, organization that provides such guidance is Operation Clean Sweep, which has published guidance documents detailing measures to prevent marine plastic pollution. For example, Operation Clean Sweep advised not stowing resin containers on deck and instead placing resin or pellet containers in ships' holds or away from the side of the vessel. So unfortunately, although such measures reduce the risk of spills, they do not remove it completely. And when these incidents do occur, past cases have shown that quick source control in terms of lost container location, containment and recovery is crucial. And this is because slightly damaged containers can cause continuous releases of pellets for long periods of time up until they're located, contained and recovered. To help locate lost containers, modeling can be done. We can provide this service, and there are various other organizations that can do so. And this can be done if you have the time and the location from the ship's log. But modeling can be hard because of many unknowns, such as container buoyancy, but it will enable you to narrow down the area to allow surveying vessels to locate them, divers to contain them, and vessels to recover them, weather permitting, if the sea state allows. So this is an image from the Express Pearl case, and a key point to note is that container location may be possible, but following a fire or significant damage, specific container identification may not be. So the container identification number may actually be burnt off. So although rapid response and cleanup is really important, it's worth bearing in mind that if there's a chance for containers to contain H&S or products that are confirmed or to be contaminated with H&S, a precautionary approach needs to be taken, and appropriate PPE needs to be worn by responders, and sort of defined procedures followed. So a spill of plastic pellets often affects a wide geographic area, as we've seen from the Transcarrier incident and various others, including the Express Pearl, and it results in a protracted shoreline response. This is a map of the nodal contamination following the Express Pearl case, where the colors equate to high, medium, or low contamination. And to quantify high, medium, and low contamination, shoreline surveyors were asked to see how many nodals they could collect in 2 minutes from a section of stereotypical shoreline of that contamination and weigh them. So high therefore equates to 30 grams of nodals collected by one individual in 2 minutes, medium 5 to 30 grams, and low less than 5 grams, therefore allowing shoreline cleanup prioritization according to the level of contamination. And this sort of just helps to quantify sort of what you're seeing on the graph, but also standardize it across people. And there was training provided so everyone standardized this approach. Because there can be a high variability in the distribution of nodals and recharge can occur throughout the tidal cycle, a cyclical process of surveying and site prioritization is often required. And that was seen to have worked well in the Transcarrier case and has been adopted in various other instances as well. And past cases have shown that the best forum for prioritization is during regular incident command meetings. So for example, that's daily during the initial incident phase to ensure all stakeholders are aligned, everyone that's involved can get an up-to-date briefing of the situation. And such meetings facilitate sort of good dissemination of up-to-date information, are a good forum to discuss intergovernmental cooperation and formal requests for assistance that may be coming from local organizations, NGOs, or assisting governments. So following the stranding of plastics, burial can occur after one tidal cycle, or it can take weeks or even months, as we've seen, and there may be cycles of accretion or erosion in relation to metocean conditions. So having cleanup teams that can mobilize quickly has really proven to be highly beneficial to maximize the recovery before it then becomes buried or mobilizes elsewhere. These images show one of the worst affected sections of the shoreline immediately following the incident and several months afterwards. And despite very extensive cleanup efforts from the outset, continuous wave action still resulted in burial, just owing to the quantity that was spilt. So I think this image here is a good example of burial after 2 to 3 weeks following the spill at one specific site. This was the worst affected site, and which I think really emphasizes how difficult it can be to conduct a cleanup. Burial of 10 to 15 centimeters has been quite common, and burial of nodals down to 1 meter has even been observed at the worst affected site. So I think it's also worth mentioning that, for instance, we have been involved in at-sea response has not been considered a realistic response option. Although many nodals float, and because of their white color and they're very small, obviously, it's very difficult to see them in the water, and this has hampered recovery, amongst other reasons as well. also the small mesh size that you'd need if you were going to use a net. So what have we learned when it comes to cleanup? Well, past events have shown that manual recovery is one of, in one form or the other, has been found to be the most effective and pragmatic cleanup technique, particularly when coupled with vacuum systems or assisted by a mechanical plant. Quick mobilization teams can recover debris from the strand line and move it above the high tide mark, both to avoid remobilization and burial. And one of the key reasons why recovery by personnel has been the most effective is simply because personnel can access most shoreline types and they can selectively recover nurdles while reducing the collection of unpolluted material. So what have we learned in terms of mechanical recovery? Well, past cases have shown that mechanical recovery really does and can work well. It can be highly efficient for recovery and separation of nurdles from sand. For example, beach cleaners on flat manicured beaches, when there's a little bit of moisture in the sand, can be efficient. However, mechanical equipment can fail, and it's often not as selective as manual recovery. The key issues that have been found during past cases is that although mechanical devices enable rapid recovery of material, they are limited by site access and often lead to the collection of a lot of clean material. And this clean material requires separation at a later date, and this adds to the volume of waste to be disposed of, if it can't be segregated, that is. And we would always advise segregation, and we've seen this in many of the past cases as well, either via water baths or series of sieving separation devices. And careful use is therefore required to ensure selective debris recovery from the outset. I mean, it reduces a lot of the effort later on if separation is required. So the bottom right image with the front end loader is a good example of how mechanical recovery can be really efficient as it comes in and skims the surface. But what we have seen in the past is if the operator hasn't been briefed in advance and dig too deep, then it can lead to the recovery of a lot of clean sand, for example, which adds to the workload later down the line. So vibrating tables, durable trommels, and beach cleaning devices can be effective at a later date, but often manual recovery is the most appropriate during the initial phase. So endpoints. The decision of setting endpoints and terminating a response is a difficult one. Spills of plastic pellets are, as we know, time-consuming and labor-intensive to clean up, and the quantity spilt, nature of the shoreline and the area impacted may often mean that practically collecting every last plastic pellet, unfortunately, is not achievable, which is why prevention is easier than cure. It may also not be the provide net environmental benefit if it's continued too long. So some proposals we've seen involved recording the quantity of nurdles collected per person per day in kilograms or grams in order to determine when there are diminishing returns. For one specific case, workers were collecting 380 grams per worker per day, but approximately 1 year later, they were sporadically recovering between 120 and 15 grams per person per day, which is where this graph starts around 1 year after the start of cleanup. What the graph shows is that the volume of plastics collected per person per day decreases and eventually starts to plateau, and at which point the difficult decision as to when to terminate the cleanup has to be made, considering the net environmental benefit. And we heard that in the Norway scenario, I think it was half a litre per person per day was considered that threshold. Another technique discussed has been to offset the plastic pollution by additional collection of non-instant related plastic, which is easier to collect and will inevitably fragment into microplastics if it's not recovered, that is. And this attempt to find the best solution with the maximum environmental benefit, however, does obviously introduce challenges, and various approaches have been proposed and have been implemented. So this image is just a picture, I believe, of a fishing vessel which has been adapted to collect macroplastics, so the larger plastics floating on the water, to offset the nurdles or plastic pellets that are more difficult to collect. So what is the impact? Well, the reality is that there's extensive literature on the impacts of marine plastics. They can attract environmental pollutants and be consumed by marine animals and birds. But we haven't seen any evidence of direct impacts to fauna and flora directly following large plastic spills. Now, that's not to say that there isn't any impact from these plastic spills. It simply means we haven't received peer-reviewed scientific studies immediately following large plastic pollution events to make conclusive assessments. The picture on the left is a sad but interesting one. Initial reactions may lead you to believe that the fish died due to plastic ingestion, but this image could also be the result of nodal contamination post-mortem, if the fish, for example, was washed into a nodal deposit after death, which is highly plausible in the Express Pearl case with such quantities. This is why proper studies, including post-mortem inspections of the stomachs, are required to draw a proper conclusion. And I think the transcarrier incident in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark was a good example of this, where some studies were conducted of birds and fish and looked into this in detail. What we can say is, generally speaking, that more comprehensive studies are needed to get a complete understanding of the potential impacts. But in the meantime, preventative measures should continue to be the focus. So the final lesson learnt that I think is worth mentioning is that plastics, or pure plastics such as nurdles, appear not to be classified as a hazardous noxious substance under the HNS Convention 1996 and the 2010 Protocol, or dangerous goods under the Imd G Code, although they are considered HNS according to the OPRC HNS Protocol. If the plastic pellets become contaminated with dangerous goods or HNS during a vessel collision or fire, there is the potential for the plastics to become toxic and a vehicle for these substances to move around the marine environment. And once in the marine environment, there is the potential for them to move into different environmental compartments, such as biota. Additional debris contaminated with toxic substances adds complexity to the incident. This influences the PPE worn by cleanup personnel, can cause delays in finding labs for toxicological analysis, and introduces complexities for waste disposal. So I think it's something to bear in mind when conducting contingency planning and revising documentation and preparing for the unfortunate next spill, if and when it occurs. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Thomas.
Cheers.
And thank you. And thank you for all the presentations, actually, all the presentations that we've heard today. I have to say, I'm really impressed by all these presentations, all the speakers, and by the range of perspectives and of experiences that you have brought to this event today. We've had global legal context, global statistics, a global context on pollution management in the presentation we just had from you just now, Thomas, but also earlier from Espen and Irmelin. We've had a lot of hands-on experiences of literally sieving nurdles out of the sand and cleaning plastic from beaches of Norway and Sweden and Denmark and even Sri Lanka. To the insights from Gisela earlier about the incident investigation that really highlighted the whole chain of factors that led to the transcarrier incident happening in the first place. And we even heard about some other sources of plastic pollution on the coast. It's not all just about shipping. So thank you to all of you. I have you on a screen next to me here now. So I would like to invite all of you, all of the speakers, to please turn your cameras on. And check that you are centered on your webcam and that you are visible to the audience if you are able to. We now have almost half an hour. We have until 5 minutes to 1 to go through some questions that we prepared in advance, because we would like to gain some more reflections from all of you as a panel of speakers. So what I will do is I will read out a question. We have 6 questions prepared in total. We may not be able to get through all of them, but that is okay. I will read out one question at a time, and all of you are able to speak if you wish to. Oh, my monitor. Anyway, I have a technical issue here with my monitor, but it's okay. So I will read out a question. If you wish to speak, and if you wish to say something, please raise your hand. It helps me if you can raise your hand virtually. In Zoom, there's a little box, there's a little button that makes it easier for me to see if you have your hand raised. And then I will invite you to say something. If you don't, sorry, I have to turn my second monitor on and off. That's why I'm leaning forward a bit. It's okay if several of you answer the same question. That works for us. And we'll see how many questions we get through and how much time we have. So the first question I have for you is, in retrospect, what are the most important lessons that were learned from the trans-carrier incident? Most important lessons. Gisela, I see you have your hand up. Please go ahead. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, I think I touched on that on my presentation from our side, and also, so we need to prevent it from happening. That's I think that's the key thing. What I believe, and that's why we'd rather learn before the incidents than after the incidents, and that's, I think that's vital for everyone of us. From our side, we need to address the risks better, and we need to carefully monitor and do what we can to prevent this from happening. So that's on the pre side. After the incident, I think the lessons learned is that this cooperation worked. It really works when you get those party who knows the Oslofjord better than anyone, yeah, to actually take charge and to be the leader of the operation. That was very effective, and it's a different spill than an oil spill is. It needs different tools and different organization, I think, as compared to an oil spill, and that was very a very important factor to having a success in the cleanup. If it's a success, that can always be discussed because there is plenty of noodles still out there. But I think that's a key learning from our side.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gisela. Would anybody else like to come in on that question about the most important lessons learned from your perspective? Ryan, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what I said at the end of mine. I think we have a need for national contingency plans if this does happen again. I do agree that prevention is what we need to focus on, but if this does happen, that we need to have plans that go into effect to take care of it very quickly. And that does include the local protocols for our municipalities. So that's just what I wanted to add.
Thank you very much. Any other thoughts or comments? Okay, I will move on to the next question then, which actually it sort of builds on what Gisela was just saying. So in order to prevent similar incidents from happening in the future, which would be the most important steps to be put into effect? Is there anything else that any of you would like to say that hasn't already been said, or that you'd like to stress in particular that you feel hasn't been stressed enough? Thomas, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's probably just worth reiterating really what's just been said, that contingency planning really is key. I'd support that it is very different in terms of tools and equipment, and contingency planning should account for this. If specific plans can be made for debris spills, then it would only be a good thing. So yeah, absolutely.
Gisela, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just to follow up on Aspen's presentation, where he says that there is a movement when it comes to regulation, and there was a question on the Zoom also asking were there a plastic bag or something inside the container, and yes, it was a plastic bag, but it was not fit for any external force. Basically, it was just put there to prevent it from going outside the container during loading. So we need some rules. We need to treat this as something else than just a regular cargo, basically, because you can't. It's like putting a hole in a tank. It pours until it's empty. So this regulation work and this best practice thing, that's something we need to work on, and we need to get that in place.
Thank you very much, Gisela. If at any point you have thoughts that go back to the earlier questions, that's okay. You know, you can just raise your hand and sort of return to earlier points. I will continue to move on though and go to the, oh, Espen, you have your hand up, go ahead.
There. Yes, I just want to have a follow-up on the matters related to lack of regulation, as this the plastic pellets are not covered by the Imd G Code, and although there's a proposal now in the IMO, in the Marine Environment Protection Committee, to look into it, I think in that relation, it's actually important to highlight that this won't be a quick fix. This is work that will definitely take some time. It won't it won't be finished over the course of the next few months. So, but I think I don't remember really who mentioned it, but there's actually some companies that on their own initiative have implemented best practice routines, which is in fact so that's a pleasure to hear that someone is actually doing more than what they're required to. So yeah, but I think it's been mentioned by many today that lack of regulation is a problem. So I think it was just important to highlight it, that it's not yeah, this is a slow process, if I may say so. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Gisela, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, we have already implemented those things in our company, so we don't carry them on the forward part of the vessel where they're exposed. So, but as we also could see, the spill from Transcarrier was very small. Yeah, so unless we as an industry start pulling in the right direction, and also it's kind of interesting because I didn't know about plastic noodles until last year. So it was unknown that this was a big problem, and it was unknown. So to get things really working, we need to get the industry on board, and we need to start working. We need to keep a high pressure on that, and we're doing what we can. I have a meeting with the Norwegian Ship Owners Association in some weeks, where I will present the Transcarrier case and our lessons learned there. We also are in contact with all the parties that we can. But I think as an industry, we need to join forces here and talk to and the directorate, talk to your friends wherever, so we can sort of have a stronger push on this. It's important. Thanks.
Irmelin, and then I think we'll move on to the next question.
I didn't raise my hand first because I didn't have much new things to add, but just to highlight the thing that's been said about it taking a while, because it does take quite a long time to change the regulations. Obviously, it takes quite a lot of circulations and meetings and everything, but that's why we're then planning to first propose a circular, to develop a circular, because that can be a bit quicker than actually amending the Imd G Code. And then that would increase awareness for ship owners about the hazards associated with plastic pellets.
So we've heard a lot about the regulatory side, and we've heard a lot about the actions that industry is taking and can take and should take. The next question really concerns the role of NGOs and voluntary organizations. So what is it that they can contribute? Florina, please go ahead.
Thank you. We really see that it's a strength to have volunteers on site, because mostly often it's people who live out on the coast. So they're really there where we want to look, and it's hard to look if you don't have eyes on the site. So it's really a strength to have, like, for us, an established beach cleaning map. So people are used to report things on a map, and to have like an established contact net. We have like social media as well to involve volunteers, and the beach cleaning map that we promote people to use all the times, like when they go cleaning. And the professional cleaners, they report on the same map, so that the volunteers also see the professional and the municipalities' work. So it's a really, we think it's a really good thing to have like an established cleanup routine, where we could then clean up the pellets as well, but we're missing like routines, as we said earlier, for acute pollution events, to have like a faster reaction. So I really hope that we will be able to work on that.
Thank you, Florina. Ryan, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add that I know that through OSPAR, Scotland is working on this pellet problem and trying to raise awareness of it. I think that one thing that we could do, the NGOs from this, is to put the conclusions from this workshop together and send it to the responsible in Scotland, so that they could take this incident and what the outcomes of it have been and work, I guess, from there out to the IMO and the responsible organizations that can do something about changing the international rules.
That is great, and that's great to hear that there's a specific action that is coming out of this conversation. Would anybody else like to add anything about the NGOs and the voluntary sector and the role that they can take? Florina, you have your hand up again.
Yes, I just want to add to what Ryan just said. Maybe it would also be good if we can have like a lessons learned, and if Norway also could like sum up their routines, that we could share it with OSPA and Helcom as well. I heard that one of them, I think Helcom, was also working on something like some routines, so that we can really share it in the established networks, and yes, share it to the other countries as well that are not participating today.
I think that sounds like a great idea. This is also something that will have relevance more globally, maybe. Gisela, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Talking all the time now, but that's just how it is. Without the NGOs, we wouldn't manage so successfully. So that was key to our success. And we were very clear on that we shouldn't treat them as volunteers. We should treat them as employees, because we don't want to take advantage of people's goodwill when we are the polluter. So that was also important for us to make it clear that these are paid workers. So we are doing they are paid workers to clean our mess. Yeah. And the thing with plastic noodles is that it spreads so widely. So unless you have, like it was said, unless you have plenty eyes out there and plenty hands, you're not effective. So this ability to be everywhere and at the same time was extremely important in our case. And luckily, almost luckily, the major hit point was the Oslo fjord. Yeah, so OF could manage the sort of the operation from one point. If it could be that it spread over a lot bigger area, and we would use other organizations and on other NGOs also. But again, it was vital for this operation that we had them, and we are so thankful for their efforts in this, really.
Thank you. I think this is a great point that leads us really on to the next question, because I think what we're hearing here is the importance of cooperation and the importance of integration of different actors and different actions to really address this issue, from prevention through to dealing with incidents, from the global to the local scale. So do any of you have any thoughts or any comments on how that necessary interaction and that necessary collaboration can be encouraged and facilitated? What is it that helps make that collaboration happen in practice? Thomas, please go ahead.
I'd say just from our perspective, when we get involved in incidents, is and I think it was previously mentioned, is someone taking responsibility at the start to coordinate, and in this case it was the NCA, I believe, and organizing sort of instant command meetings where all stakeholders have a seat that can take an ear, listen to the updates and updated scenarios, so everyone's on the same page. They have all the standard information. Otherwise, it's very much like Chinese whispers. People are getting delayed information later on, and it slows down the whole process. So I think a key point from our perspective is probably regular command meetings that include all stakeholders. That's NGOs, government, volunteer representatives. Obviously, if they become too long, they can become unwieldy and inefficient, and that's also something that's been observed in past cases. But particularly during the initial phase, it's concise, relevant information to all parties, so it can be disseminated, and even requests for assistance. They can state, this is what's needed, this is where it's needed, and this is the contact details to do it. And then people can go out and filter in a coordinated way. Otherwise, if there's a request for assistance, it can become chaotic and not standardized. And obviously, I think if that's detailed in any coordination plans, so for an oil spill, it's in the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan. But if it's a bespoke one for such scenarios like this, then that could really, I think, benefit and help everyone. I hope that's useful.
Thank you, Thomas. Any further comments? What about the international aspect of this? What about ways of making sure that lessons and experiences are effectively shared, and that actions are coordinated where necessary internationally as well? So that's in relation to notification when incidents do happen, communication about the cleanups and cleaning methods and effectiveness. Ryan, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. My thought was that it was mentioned before the Copenhagen Agreement. We've had good contacts with the Danish Navy through Chemo, and they coordinate when it comes to oil spills. And I know that their responsibility stops when it reaches the shore, but they do have a wide contact group in the Nordic countries, which could be an authority that could promote this, or through their contacts with the national governments, try and coordinate this somehow.
Gisela, go ahead.
Yeah, and from our point of view, it's ITOP that makes that international network of ours. And whenever we have whether it's a pollution incident like this or an oil spill, they are involved, and we get to drag on their experiences and their knowledge all over the world. So from a ship owner's perspective, they are our tool to be able to spread the knowledge and experiences throughout the world, basically.
Thank you. Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, just to repeat that point, I guess it's absolutely right. We're that's a role that we do in addition to responding on site and remotely and providing advice. We also have a database of all the incidents that we've been involved in or that we've provided advice on. And if that's ever needed, it's free of charge. Anyone can get in contact and collect that information if they want to. We can provide it in terms of a GIS map for the location of the incidents, but also the knowledge transfer. We do lots of these sorts of things. So yeah, we'd be more than happy to assist in that respect.
Thank you. Gisela, you have your hand up again. Go ahead.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, and also even if there is no ship owner involved, and then therefore the P&I club is not involved. Yeah, so ITOP is not contacted. It's definitely a helpful experience base for the authorities to reach out to ITOP. If you should simulate a nurdle spill, then ITOP have more knowledge than anyone on how to do that, and say that we didn't manage to find that this came from Transcarria, then we wouldn't be involved. Yeah, so this ability to contact ITOP and use their experience should be communicated throughout. And I think I hope that Thomas is not angry now because I'm selling it to other than the ship owners, but I think that's this knowledge in ITOP is vital, basically.
Yeah, I'll add to that. For final closing comment, I guess that I completely agree with all of that. And there's a good example of that, I think, is there was an oil spill, a mystery spill in Brazil. And although there was no vessel held responsible, ITOP responded and assisted the Brazilian government and spent, I think it was weeks, months there to assist in responding and creating coordinated cleanup measures. So even if it's not from a vessel, we do offer assistance and we can deploy to site as well. So governments can reach out as well. Anyone can notify us, NGOs, governments, or ship owners and insurers.
Thank you, Thomas. We have about 2 more minutes before we hand over to the closing of this event. Are there any final thoughts, any final reflections, anything you wish you'd been asked that you would like to share before we wrap up and close this event? Thomas, do you still have your hand up, or is that a new hand?
Yes, I'll just say a final point then. I really appreciate, thank you for having me. I think this is a great forum to discuss lessons learned. If more of this happened, there'd be a lot better techniques involved and people would respond a lot more efficiently. So thank you. I also wanted to add that I think the Norwegian example, the Transcarria incident, was really good in terms of setting the bar and the standard of what can be done. And the mapping solution that was created was really effective, in my opinion. It enabled public to notify where they'd observed nurdles, which there can't be enough responders to do that on such a big coastline. So using NGOs, public, to notify the location, treating them as responders, it's a good example, but getting that data in a coordinated map that's transboundary, so Sweden, Norway, and Denmark can all visualize it. I think that absolutely should be included in contingency planning using this mapping system in the future. So yeah, thank you.
That is great. Thank you, Thomas, because that was basically an answer to the question that I didn't have time to ask, which was about the mapping solutions and the role of the public in this. So that was great timing. Thank you very much for saying that. I must say I have really enjoyed this, despite the seriousness of the topic and some of the depressing statistics that we hear about and the challenge that we face. Yeah, I have really learned a lot, and I'm really happy to have been able to be here today. And thank you again from me personally to all of the speakers. I would now like to hand over back to Espen Søylen to wrap up and close this event officially. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. I share your view on this seminar today. I think it has been very fruitful. From our point of view, it was, of course, a new experience, and we saw the importance of sharing our experience with all the stakeholders in the whole complex operation this has been. And we hope that we have shown today that it's important to be able to share information, and also maybe it's a good idea to talk about establishing some institutional relations between stakeholders and nations. We hope this also has encouraged the ministry responsible to take this work further on in the Nordic cooperation. We also are happy to note that Norway now is supporting the Sri Lankan suggestion to the Marine Environment Protection Committee on requirements to handling of plastic pellets. We hope that the other Nordic countries also will support this in the meeting to come. It's very important to prevent pollution, of course, but when accident happens, we must also be better prepared to do the cleanups. I would like to thank all of the participants today, especially the speakers and panelists. And of course, I would like to thank the Nordic Council of Ministers and our Ministry of Climate and Environment to take these initiatives and to have this opportunity to share our experience. And also, Louise and you all in Grid Arendal, thank you for doing all the practical facilitating of this event. We do hope that this is not the last meeting on this topic. So we hope you have been encouraged to keep on the dialogue to prevent and to clean up plastic pollution. So with this, I thank you all for today and wish you good luck in your work in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we wish you a very good remainder of the day. Thank you.
Thank you all.